more casual, I want to ask you about your inspiration for writing this book. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Oh, I love this book so much. I had already written a book and published it on my grief journey, and it was
Mm-hmm.
written in poetry and prose. And so I had a lot of that rhyming meter was,
Yeah.
very typical for my way of writing. And so
I
on
love that part. Like, I love the fact that it was like poetry as you were writing
It's a
it.
poetry. It is. It's a
Yeah.
poetry children's book, and but honestly, it was my mom who prompted. She said, "Why don't you write a children's book in your rhymey way?" And I thought, okay, well, let me try. And
Yeah.
so much of the ways that I write, it doesn't feel like I'm trying to construct the poem. It feels more like a download, like it's something that it just comes through me. And
Mm-hmm.
even afterwards, sometimes I look at what I've written and it is almost unfamiliar. And so this book came through that way. I just sat down and thought,
Yeah.
well, let's see what comes through. And about 20 minutes later, I had written this book, and I had no idea, honestly, even that there were parameters for children's books, that there are a certain amount of pages and a certain
Mm-hmm.
amount of
Yeah,
words
I
per
did not know
page.
that.
I know, and I went through and kind of calculated how many pages and how many words and realized, like,
Yeah.
oh, it was really, it fit perfectly.
Yeah. And I will say too, Shaleem, that as a clinical psychologist who works with children and families, and I do see a lot of children and families with grief they've lost a parent, they've lost a pet, they've lost a sibling. Um, I will say that there's not enough children's books out there for families. So when you were telling me about this book, I was like, oh, that's amazing. I have to get this book. And I just think that the more that we can educate children and families and talk about it in a more normal way, we just don't normalize talking about grief and death in our culture very well. I don't think we do a very good job at that. And so when I saw your book and you were telling me about it, I was like, I'm so glad that there's another children's book out there.
It's so important. Yeah, absolutely. I kind of researched in to see how many other children's books there are around grief,
Mm-hmm.
and I agree that there is a deficit,
Yeah,
and we know that kids will grieve the way that parents are demonstrating it, or adults are
exactly.
demonstrating it around
Mm-hmm.
them. And if the adults are awkward and don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to talk to the
Right.
kids,
Yeah.
then the kids are going to read that and they're going to wind up feeling awkward. And so I think it's so important to
Yeah.
have these
I've worked with so many
conversations.
patients and families too, where the child is now grown up and they said that they never once talked about their brother who died to cancer. Like their parents never talked about that, but the child was able to see that their parents were clearly grieving and they never discussed that. They never talked about that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that that's more common
Mm-hmm.
than, and it's sad. And then obviously that's the thing with grief, is grief will have its day. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you don't get to experience it in all the different and kids
Mm-hmm.
actually experience grief, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
In every phase of their growing up, they're going to experience it differently. And so if they didn't
Mm-hmm.
get a chance to, it's definitely going to be there as
Yeah.
they're adults,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I want to talk about parts of your book too. So I love the fact that there's so many animals in this book. It's so sweet. And what child or even adult can't relate to this book with animals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have Nigel the seagull, you have Gus the sea turtle, you have Elsie Mae, who's the elephant seal, you have Adrian the dolphin, and then you have Dorothy the sea otter. Like, how did you pick all these animals? I was like, I have to like ask her about this.
They're also important, but honestly, like I said, I almost didn't pick them. It felt like the story just came to me. I wrote it literally very, very quickly one afternoon. But Elsie Mae is a real elephant seal, and she
Yeah.
does her molt in Anacortes, Washington, where my mom lives. And
So it's
my
based on a true story.
that is based on a true story. And
Yeah.
there really are orange cones, and there really is a yellow rope around her protecting
Yeah.
her. And she really is missed. There is a
Oh
sadness
my
every time she goes
gosh.
away. And most elephant seals are in colonies. And so Elsie
Right.
Mae was born in this area, and so she's always been an outlier. So there is a sense that she experiences some loneliness because she's not having a normal elephant seal life where
Mm-hmm.
she's molting in colonies and having her
Yeah.
baby in colonies. Instead, she's
Yeah.
kind of on her own here, and so she's got this human family that loves her. And so I love that each of them, Gus, you get the feeling that he's sort of wise,
Yeah.
and Nigel is just a young seagull who's lost his mom, and so he
Yeah.
needs an older mentor to help
Right.
him understand, like, oh,
Yeah.
grief needs a way to commemorate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, having the then Adrian the dolphin, and
Yeah.
and Dorothy the otter, I mean, she finally asked the question because they've been using this word
Yes.
the whole time. Like,
Yeah.
what is a commemoration?
Yeah,
And finally
exactly.
for them to be able to say, like, this is what it is and this is what we're doing.
Right.
And, and I think that there's, by the end of the book, there's this great feeling because as Elsie May is going off to the Arctic, she's getting to swim away with her new friend,
Mm-hmm.
the dolphin, and we've got like now the otter sitting back on his rocky
Yeah.
island with Nigel watching them go, and so also that sense that they're not so alone.
Yeah. I was gonna just say too, like, on page 24, I love what you said here too, is that like, as he watched Elsie May arrange her orange cones along the driftwood shore, he realized with a few friends around, grief is easier to endure. I mean, it makes sense that, like, if you have your friends around you, if you have people around you, grief is easier to endure. Like, I think a lot of times is that grief, you're by yourself, you can't express those emotions, or you're shamed for expressing those emotions, or you feel shameful, or there's some negative emotion that goes with part of that. But when we grieve together, when we can share our emotions with one another, then it's easier to endure those emotions, right? We don't have to be alone in that. I love what you said.
That's
here.
one of my favorite lines in the
Me
book
too.
I do, and it's so true. Grieving is isolating, and we know that. And I think part of it is because when you go through something that's a very catastrophic loss, you are going to become a new version of yourself, and so you're still trying to comprehend who you are. So it makes sense that other people can't comprehend what you're going through or who you are, because you're having a hard time comprehending it yourself. And then out of that discomfort, they think they're being respectful to give you your space, but sometimes you can really feel abandoned,
Right.
and
Exactly.
you hear that story over and over, that people think the people that will have shown up for them didn't. And then surprising that the new people come in and show up. And so absolutely. And I think that's why this book is so important to not just for the person who's going through the grief, but for kids to realize, like, hey, if they have a friend who lost a pet or lost a brother or lost a parent, this is how they can show up and be there for that friend to just help them endure this load, because grief can feel heavy.
Absolutely. It kind of made me think about too, is just like a lot of times when we go through an experience like that, I've gone through a loss in my own family, is that, as well as you, a lot of people will say, hey, reach out to me if you need anything, call me if you need anything. And the truth of the matter is that the people who are grieving don't actually reach out. Like, I remember with myself and my family, I didn't want to burden any of my friends. I didn't want to really reach out to them. I would have appreciated more if they just said, hey, I'm coming over. Like, can I bring a board game? Can I bring a board game?
Yeah.
Or like, hey, I'm coming over to just say hi to you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Like, no big deal. You can just say no, right? Like, just say you're going to come over, or just say what you're going to do. Don't say, reach out to me if you need something. Does that make sense? Because most of the time
100%.
the griever is not going to reach out. They don't want to be a burden. But if somebody comes out and just says, I'm coming over, like, hey, I'm picking you up, we're going to go to lunch. It's like, that's amazing. That's really
amazing,
touching.
right? That's what, exactly. And I think that this book teaches that, like, how to support those people who are in grief, because
connecting with one another,
you understand that it is a burden to put on other people, because you're sad and you're grieving, and and if people come around that, sometimes they may not feel as happy as they were. And so absolutely true.
I felt like all the animals in this book, really, they didn't ask, except for the what does commemorate mean, but they were able to just sit with Nigel and his feelings and celebrate that. I didn't feel like there was a sense of like, what, like, there was not the sense of like questioning or negativity or like this emotional drama. It was just more about, we're going to be with you and we're going to work together with you and we're going to come together as a community.
I really love that. Just innate acceptance. And, absolutely, we could all learn from that, because I think we do get these questions of like, hey, how are you doing? Or why are you feeling this way? Or explain how you're feeling. And, the animals, they were just like, they were just in the flow. Like, okay, there's some grief here and we're going to have this commemoration. And like, let's do it.
It makes me think about too, like what we were talking about earlier about, commemorating the grief. And I was saying too that I don't think we do a very good job about talking about grief and commemorating. I know that in my culture we call it Dam Yo, and Dam Yo, in what it means in Vietnamese is that we honor and we celebrate the person who has passed away before us, our elders, and generally it's our elders. And even it can be for younger people who have died too soon. And so every year what we do is we cook just tons of food, and we usually cook the food that that person who passed away really liked and really enjoyed, and we put it out and we put it on an altar. We have incense, and we basically we bow and we pray to that person to say, come back, come home, we want you to come back here, and we want you to enjoy these festivities and the food that we're enjoying right now. And the idea is just really like we're welcoming that person back and we're honoring that person, and it's not boo hoo hoo, it's not crying, it's not the sad emotional. It can be, it could be, right? But the idea is that we're welcoming that person back to the home again, and we cooked all your foods and we want you to come back and we want you to visit with us, and we're honoring you. So in my culture, like we really believe in just celebrating, and I think it's in other cultures too, like Dia de los Muertos, right? Like we're celebrating the Day of the Dead. We're celebrating our ancestors. We're celebrating the people who've left before us, and we're celebrating them. We're bringing them back.
I love that. And I think, we've lost, so many of us have lost our indigenous roots. We've lost our culture because like, I'm going to cry because that sounds so beautiful. Like how healing would that be if we had systems of celebration like that in our modern life where, because where you're not carrying that grief alone. In fact, the whole family is coming together, and the whole family is creating this atmosphere of remembrance and commemoration.
Right.
I mean, that's like a built-in commemoration every single year, right. and it's a no-brainer, right? It's just like, this is how we're doing it. And then the person maybe who's really struggling with the grief isn't the one who's having to organize it all the time too,
exactly.
right? It's like, we've got these systems in place. And so I love that. And I think we've lost that, right? And so we've lost this ceremony around it. And that's part of why grief can feel so isolating. And I absolutely agree. And, so commemoration is, I think this book teaches that it is a physical act. And I think kids need that. Kids need some kind of a physical act, whether it's, having tying a message to, or, prayers and putting it in a balloon and letting that float away, or throwing some flowers in the ocean, or, having something physical that you're doing, that you're saying, hey, we're doing this for mom today. We're doing this for, your sister or your brother that died, or your pet that died. But that ultimately, and Nigel, expresses this at the end of the book, like it can be something as simple as bringing a seashell to the shore, right? Because it's what's in our hearts when we remember the ones we adore. And so in that way, life can become an act of commemoration. But kids need stuff that's physical. You can't just be like, oh, they're in your hearts forever, and so that's you're just living your life as a commemoration. It's like, no, kids need to, like, we're going to the zoo today because mom loved going to the zoo, or we're going to the water park today because that's what your brother would have loved to do, something like that. You know?
And I think just talking about it too helps lessen that sadness and that burden too. I think sometimes we think that, oh gosh, if we talk about the person who died or the person who's dead, oh gosh, we're going to make that person really sad, or that's going to be just too much and too heavy. But really the opposite is really true, is that the more that we can talk about that, then we're laughing and we're smiling, we're really talking about that person's life when they were here. That can actually be very soothing and good for your mental health too, to be able to talk about that.
Oh,
openly.
absolutely. I mean, I remember speaking to an old man whose brother had died when he was, grew up on a farm and when he was young, and his parents never spoke his brother's name again, right? And so these are the cultural barriers that we're coming to. We've got like these ancient roots that understood we need sacred ceremonies around grief. And then, we hit this roadblock where it was like, we're not going to acknowledge it. We're not going to talk about it. We're just going to bury it in the past. And it's so healing. I've got one of my griefs is, my dog Digby, who died 3 years ago, and I love it. The little boy across the street is 9 years old now, but he loved Digby and knew Digby, and so we talk about Digby almost every time that I see him, and I'm just like, I love this kid because
he's gonna remember that.
And it's so healing to just be around people who want to talk about the people, the dog that I loved who's gone, and so, in the same way he never met my husband who died, but he he's just as happy to say, "Oh, your husband, who has passed away, Brad," and we'll have a conversation where we've talked about both Brad and Digby, and
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes in my backyard throwing the ball for his dog, and I was like,
Oh,
adults could learn so much from kids about that. Like, let's
absolutely. Well, they're
speak
so
their
innocent. They
name.
just like
Yeah,
kids have no filter. They just kind of
right.
say what they say, and they're very genuine about it.
It's really important
I
to
love
speak their
that.
name. Yeah,
Oh, that's good.
yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about this book?
I would just say, like, this, anybody who you think might benefit from this book,
Mm-hmm.
like, please recommend it. I'm gonna, it's available in hardcover, softcover. It's available also as an ebook.
On Amazon.
Yeah, on
Mm-hmm.
Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and other places
Mm-hmm.
as well. And that, I think it's also for adults who don't know how to talk to kids
Yeah.
about grief. Like, this is just a great way to have like a grief circle for kids and just open up the conversation, and it does leave you feeling with a lot of hope, I think.
I love that.
Yeah, and sacredness.
I think that's so important. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I appreciate you
Oh,
telling
thank
me.
you.